As always, this session will be recorded and made available on our website by the end of the week. So, Mark, if you're ready, I'm going to go ahead and switch screens and make you presenter.
Cool, let's do it.
There we go.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen real quick.
Okay.
Right, so we're going to start off, so you guys all know a little bit about how I look, so it's not going in totally blind. So what we're going to talk about today is really PerformancePoint scorecards and dashboards. We'll talk through some of the basics of creating those and then deploying those. This is quite closely aligned to a couple of the chapters in the book that we've launched a couple months back, the SharePoint 2010 BI Trainer. So if you guys don't have that book and you want to get a piece of reference material, that'll be the place to go. So introduction and then straight to the practical. I'm really not going to spend a lot of time talking to you guys and doing things. We're really going to jump in and go straight to the practical. We'll do a couple of different pieces in the practical. We'll talk a little bit about what you should be doing when you're organizing your PerformancePoint content. I'll show those of you who've pretty much never seen PerformancePoint before that there are actually two ways to open the dashboard designer. We'll then actually open up the dashboard designer, and I'll spend a couple of minutes talking about what the terms are that are used inside the dashboard designer. This is something that the real newbies sometimes struggle a little bit with, because a scorecard and a dashboard and some other tools have got a slightly different meaning perhaps. And really that's all the introductory stuff, and then we're going to jump in, we're going to develop a dashboard, and we're going to deploy it through to SharePoint. So without further ado, let me open up my SharePoint site. Right, so what we've got here is a very vanilla SharePoint site. It's the BI Center template, which has quite a lot of the stuff all set up for you already. Now, if any of you have used this BI Center template before, you'll know that the first way that you can open up Dashboard Designer is by using this Create Dashboards and saying Start using PerformancePoint services, and there's a button over there. Now that's really for somebody who's learning PerformancePoint for the first time, you haven't created any other content. There's another way to open it up, and we'll show you that in just a moment. Now, the other thing about PerformancePoint is that all the content that you create inside PerformancePoint is actually stored inside SharePoint. If we have a look over here, there's a couple of different libraries that SharePoint's created for us out of the box. Now, I'm going to start at the top, and the first one, Dashboards, is where you're actually deploying your finished dashboards to. So it's an actual SharePoint page that you're deploying. We're going to use this one in its current format as it is, so we're not going to change that at all. Second one then is Data Connections. So Data Connections is where you actually store a connection to your data source. Once again, we're going to use it as is, and we're not going to change anything. Libraries just takes you to list libraries. We'll skip on past that. Final one is PerformancePoint Content. Now, PerformancePoint Content is the place where all the little bits and pieces that you're developing actually sits inside SharePoint. The default library is PerformancePoint Content, and that's great if you're looking at the technology for the first time, but you'll soon realize that if you put all the content that you're creating inside that one library, it's going to become enormously hard to try and find things. So what I always do is I say, look, don't even touch that PerformancePoint Content library. Go ahead and ignore it completely, and actually create your own PerformancePoint Content libraries that are very closely aligned to what you're building inside them. The way you do that, you go Site Actions, and we got this More Options button over here. Okay, and this brings up a Silverlight control. If you don't have Silverlight installed, you'll get a much blander type of interface, but you got the same functionality. Now, what I said is we want to create a PerformancePoint Content list. So if we go to List over here, say PerformancePoint Content List, and really I'm going to call this the August 25 webinar, because that's really the intent of what this is going to be. That's a trick that you want to use, is name these libraries after what you're actually going to put in them. And I'm going to hit Create. Right. Now, obviously we've created this place. Getting some feedback that the voice is cutting. Rachel, how's my voice reception over there? Rachel, guys? Okay.
Yep.
Lou's saying it's
no,
fine.
the voice is fine. Audio is fine. I'm not having any problems.
I had two people pop in a voice is cutting. Okay, cool. It's real good. So anyway, you're creating these PerformancePoint content libraries. You're putting your contents inside them, and you're closely aligning them to a particular dashboard or a couple of dashboards. Now what we want to do is we want to get into the dashboard designer. So we hit items, go new item, and we've got a list of what all the different items are. Now I'm actually going to open us up into dashboard designer real quick, and then we'll talk through what those different terms are. Right. So there we go. It's opened up Dashboard Designer, and it's asking us to create a dashboard in a certain template. And in PerformancePoint terms, a dashboard is really a collection of web pages that sit in SharePoint that are made up of multiple components. And the dashboard itself has multiple zones and multiple pages, and you put all the content that you're working with together inside that dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, use the default header 2 columns. And then I'm going to talk you through the environments a little bit. So we've got really 4 areas inside Dashboard Designer. We've got the ribbon up top, and there's quite a lot of stuff you can do inside the ribbon. On the left, we have a list of all the things that we've brought into our workspace, i.e. anything that we're actually working on that's come down to our computer or SharePoint is in the workspace on the left. You choose what you're working on by going on the left. Middle piece is what we call the design surface. And this will change depending on what object you're working on. It'll look different for a dashboard than from a scorecard and that kind of thing. And then right on the right-hand side, we've got all the things that we can add to the thing we're working on. Now, of course, we haven't built anything just yet, so there's nothing there. I'm just going to give this dashboard a name. I'm going to call it August, and I'm going to change that page name to the first page. Not very descriptive, but you change this to be whatever you're trying to demo off. Alright, so there we have dashboard. That's great. What do we need to do? We need to bring some data into our dashboard, and we need to do that firstly by creating a data connection. The data connection stores all the information about connecting to your cube or your table. We've got various things that we can pull data from. This demo we're going to stick to analysis services. A lot of the stuff for Excel services and SharePoint lists and SQL tables is very similar to what we're going to show you with AS, but it's not quite as rich. AS always gives you the best experience. So the first thing is you need to put in your server name. I need to spell it right. Okay, and that's my server. You need to choose a database, and I'm going to demo off AdventureWorks. And you need to choose a cube. Pretty simple. At this point I always hit test data source, but there is one little trick over here. If you are using Kerberos and you're using delegation, you need to make sure that you tick the per user identity. I'm going to use the unattended service account. Test data source, and it succeeded. Great, we've created our data source that connects through to the database. There's one more thing that we need to do when we're setting up this data source. That's actually map our time dimension. This gives PerformancePoint the ability to do some really cool calculations using the time dimension. So I can say, what is the relative date? So take today's date and give me all the days in a year and that kind of thing. So what we do is we hop on over to time, and we choose our dimension. In this case, it's date.date.calendar. Then we need to choose a date to begin the year. Now, just be really careful with this. If you choose the wrong date, say you choose the 1st of June, and you map the 1st of June to the 1st of June, it's going to look like it's working most of the time, but it actually maps which day your year begins on. So if your financial year begins in March, you just choose March. Now, this is AdventureWorks, of course, so it doesn't actually have data for the current date, so I'm going to choose Jan 1, 2008. I'm going to say day. Now I'm going to do something a little bit funny over here, and this is a thing that's specific to AdventureWorks. I'm actually going to map 1st of Jan 2011 to the 1st of Jan 2008. Now, the only reason I'm doing this is because we don't have any data in AdventureWorks for 2011. And then I'm going to finish off by mapping these time aggregations. And this piece is necessary so that PerformancePoint knows how to construct the queries when you're using time intelligence. Okay. Of course, we need to give it a decent name. I'm just going to call it DSADW for AdventureWorks. Really important tip over here. You'll notice that you've got your icon and there's a little pencil on it. That little pencil says it's not saved. Now if you've got a data source that's not saved and you actually try and use that data source later, it's going to appear like it's working, but you'll get some strange bugs because not all the changes will come through. So make sure to hit save. Okay, so that's a data connection. Now let's think about the pieces that come together when we're actually trying to build a dashboard. So I'm going to say, I'm going to go up to this one, I'm going to say new. There's a couple different things over here. First one is we've got a key performance indicator. So in the BI world, key performance indicator is really composed of two things. It says, what is the target value, or what am I trying to achieve? What is the actual value? What have I actually achieved? And that's the base definition of a KPI. Inside PerformancePoint, what you can actually do in a KPI is have multiple actuals and multiple targets. Everybody always says, but it's a KPI, it has one actual. Well, the reason we've got this ability is because you can actually put calculations inside those actuals. So you might have a KPI which is sales amount, and you might have sub-actuals inside there, which is sales amount last month, sales amount this month last year, sales amount this month, those kind of things. And that's why you would want to have multiple actuals and targets. Very useful thing there. A couple of others. Firstly, there's a filter. So a filter is really the drop-down or the calendar or any one of those things that you're trying to build. A report, and we'll dive into the reports a little bit. The report, there's a few things under report. You can either have a chart or a graph, or you can have a data grid, but you can also do things like link a Excel services chart or a reporting services chart. So stuff that isn't native to SharePoint, you'd link under report. So two more. Well, there's the dashboard, but we've already seen that. An indicator then is if you've got an indicator such as a robot, which is green, red, yellow, that stuff's in PerformancePoint already. If you want to create your own custom graphics, you want it to look a little bit different, you can create a custom indicator. So, final piece before we actually build the rest of these is the scorecard. And what you do in a scorecard is you take, it's basically a grid, firstly, and you take your KPIs, you put them on this grid, and then you add the dimensions that you're going to slice those KPIs by. Pretty simple, and we're going to build one pretty soon. So we're going to start off with building a filter, and we're going to build a time intelligence filter. Now there's a couple different types over here. Custom table is if you're pulling from SQL or Excel. MDX query is if you want to write your own MDX query. Name set if you want to use a name set. The two you're going to use the most often is this member selection, which you point to a dimension, and then this time intelligence, where you actually get to build some calcs. So I'm going to go ahead and create a time intelligence first. Alright, so the first thing I want to do is I want to tell it what data source should it use. Alright, fair enough. And then we've got this formula over here, and the formula is actually a time intelligence formula. So there's a couple of different variations. Year gives us this year, pretty basic. Month gives us this month. Day gives us today. But that's basic. What else do we want to do? Well, maybe what we want is we want to have the last 12 months. So we could say month minus 12, right, and colon month. So let's do month minus 1. Alright, so rolling months. Next one we want to do, what if we want to compare that to the same period last year? So then we can use parentheses and say year minus 1 dot month minus 12 colon year minus 1, dot month minus 1. And that's last year months. At this point, it's always a good point to actually hit preview. And what it'll do is it'll show you the actual MDX that it's generating. So here it's generating, and you can see, right, so it's taking today's date. And because we did that mapping at 2011 to 2008, it's actually done that mapping and said, well, actually, the current year is 2008. The only reason we did that is because we're using AdventureWorks. If we were using normal data, you'd normally, well, in fact, you'd almost always map 1 Jan 2011 to 1 Jan 2011. Alright, so we've got some basic date calcs. I want to just do one more, and that's last year. And I'm going to hit next. I've got a couple different display methods. In this case, we just want to have a drop down. Okay, I'm going to call this time calcs. Alright, so we've got the first components of our dashboard. We're now going to do the second component of our dashboard. And the one we're going to do is we're going to build a scorecard. But in order to build that scorecard, we need to have a KPI to bring the data in. So I'm going to create a new KPI. And I'm going to say blank KPI. Right, now the KPI that I'm going to do, I'm going to be doing a KPI on sales. And as you can see, we've got the actual, we've got the target, a couple differences here. So firstly, the name. Secondly, compare to only applies to the target. Which actual should I compare to? We've only got one. Number format, pretty basic stuff. Come back to that. Data mappings. This is where the real work happens. Currently, it's saying use a fixed value, just use one. And this is useful in prototypes. You just drop in a fixed value. You don't have the data yet. You want to have an idea of what it would look like, but you don't actually have the data. Now, in our case, we do. So we're going to hit change source, and we're going to hit DSADW. Final thing we're going to do, so this page here, what we're doing on this page is we're actually choosing the measure that we're going to use. Now there's a couple extra things that we've got over there, dimension filter and time intelligence filter. This is if you wanted to have a column for this month versus last month. We'll come back to that in a little bit. Alright, so calculation, default, I'm going to talk you through that real quick. So default is the one we're going to use now, and basically it doesn't show a sum total at the top. It'll do a roll up until the top level, but it won't show a sum total against the actual KPI. It'll show it against the drill downs. Sum of children will of course sum it up. One thing there, be real careful with average children. If you've got an average in your cube and use an average of children here, and you choose some members, that's then an average of averages, and that won't be right. Okay. So now we're going to set up the target. Very similar. So data mappings, change source. Right, now one little trick that I find really useful, not so much for this one, but often for some of the more complex things where you get calculations, if you double click on one of the existing metrics, it'll actually copy it. So now we just have to change that from sales amount and make it sales amount quota. Okay, then I'm looking at my thresholds. 100% is green, that's cool, that makes sense. Let's make that 80% instead. You do have some other options over here with setting the scoring pattern and indicator. I'll show you those in just a moment. But for now, let's just go ahead and put our KPI on a scorecard. So once again, we'll hit new, and we'll choose scorecard. Okay, now you've got a couple options over here. The analysis services option, what it'll do is it'll take you through a wizard. It'll do what we just did on the KPI. Because we've created our KPI manually, we're going to skip that one. We're going to say, give me a blank scorecard. Okay, so I'm going to start off and I'm going to call the scorecard sales scorecard. Alright, now remember, I spoke about the design surface and bringing things on over. So if you have a look at this details tab on the right, first thing you'll see is there's KPIs. And on a scorecard, you always have to have KPIs. So we browse in, we drag our KPI in. Two options over there. This one's a little bit limited in some ways. We'll normally drop the KPI on the left column. Let's go ahead and just hit update. And as you can see, we've got a sales amount and actual target. Pretty basic. What I'm going to do now is we're actually going to go and we're going to put a drill down for this. And the one that I want to drill down on is actually product categories. Now one little thing that you'll notice is that the icons for these are different. So this is a single level hierarchy in analysis services. And this here is a multi-level hierarchy. Let's drag categories in. Okay. Really important. I've clicked on the dimension, I've dragged it across. I'm pulling it above sales because I want to drill down from the total sales to the sales per product. And you can see that as I drag it around that sales block, it actually takes it to different places. So there it says parent, there it says previous sibling, there it says last child. We'll start with parent. Imagine, if you would, that we had multiple KPIs and we wanted to roll them up. Right? That's when we'd be using parent. We've pulled the child onto this, and we want to do the parent. Previous sibling and next sibling, typically you'll use that if you're bringing a second KPI on. So you've got sales amount and you want to do gross profit underneath it, you'll drag it on as a sibling. In this case, you want to drill down, so we'll do last child. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click on all products. You've got a couple different options here. One, you could manually select the different products. What would happen over here is if we actually started selling a new product category, it wouldn't appear. So what you can do, you could right-click, say auto-select members, and select children. Now, I'm going to hit update. One thing you'll notice real quick is that the target has disappeared. And one of the things that would make that happen is if you've got a metric that is unrelated to the dimension that you're using. And of course that would make it disappear. So it is one thing to be aware of. You do need to know your cube well enough in order to be able to do these things. So what I'm going to do is, if we've made this mistake and we want to pull something off, we can just highlight the whole cell, and what you can do is just hit the delete key on the keyboard. It'll disappear, and we can then choose one that will work. I'm going to use sales territory. Same thing, last child. I'm going to say auto select members, select children, and I'm going to hit update. Cool. So very, very basic type of scorecard over here. Now, I'm actually going to save that away, add it to my dashboard, and we're going to look at what this looks like in SharePoint. So let's go to August. We're on our first page. What we want to do is we want to add a couple things to dashboard. So scrolling over to the right, say sales scorecard, drop it in the left column, and that of course is just going to display the scorecard. We want to be able to filter it for a certain period of time, so I'm going to drag that to the top. Now, one thing here, we've dragged these two items onto the same page, but that just means they're on the same page. We actually have to connect them up to each other to get any sort of functionality. So what you do is you scroll over time calcs, and time is quite an important one. So you can either drag member unique name, which will send the MDX, or you can actually drag the formula. And if you want to do some other things where you modify what the current date time is, you need to drag the formula. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to do member unique name. You'll notice that firstly it's asking what do you want to connect it to. So options over here, do we want to connect it to the formula? Well, no, because we're sending the MDX over. If we wanted to send the formula over, we'd connect it to that. We don't want to put the actual dates on the row, we don't want to put it on the column, we want to do it in the background, so it just changes the values. For that we do page. Okay, and then source value, this is really the one that we clicked on and dragged. We chose member unique name to send the MDX. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to right click, I'm going to say deploy to SharePoint. It's going to ask us a couple things. So So first it's going to say, what master page do you want to use? And let me just select the dashboards. So where do you want to deploy it to? We're going to deploy it to August demo. Master page is saying, what kind of format do you actually want to use for the background SharePoint page? The two default ones, you've got a V4 and a minimal. We often go with the V4 if we haven't done our own. There's one final tick box, and I'm going to leave that for now. We're going to come back and edit it as soon as we've done a second page. Okay, so there we go. We're now in SharePoint. As we can see, target for this month is we made no sales, we've got no targets. But of course, if we roll back into last year, we again have some values over there. Cool. Rachel, we're going to do a couple more things, but I see there's a couple of questions coming in.
There are, yes. We have two questions.
Okay.
One is from John.
Can you read them to me?
Sure. One is from John. How would this look if the user didn't have permission to see a geographical area?
Okay, so that's a very good question. And it actually comes back to your data connection setup. So real quick, if you're using unattended service account, the dimension level security is applied to the unattended service account. If you flipped over to using per user identity, it would only show the user the data that he has access to. And we've got a lot of clients where they do this. They apply dimension level security, and they have an EMEA branch and they have a North America branch, and the guys in North America can only see the data for North America. It's a very, very common requirement.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. I didn't know that. That was a good question. So we have another one from Carolyn. When you set up the time dimension on the data source, do you set up the time to the first day of the current year or the first day of the first year that you have data for?
It actually doesn't matter as long as you match up the 2 years and the day of the year is the start date of the year that you want to use. I generally use the first day of the current year simply because it's less browsing back on that button. Mm-hmm. But as long as you map it up that they're the same year and you have chosen the correct start correctly, it doesn't actually matter that much.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Mark.
Cool, thanks, Rachel. Let's move on to the next pieces. All right, so we've done some basic stuff. We've built a very basic dashboard. What we're going to do now is we're going to first add a second level of drill down onto our scorecard. Right, and I'm going to go and I'm going to add back that product category to above my actual. All right, so all I did was I dragged it to above the actual. I'm going to hit auto select and select the children. Alright, so now as you can see, what I've got is I've actually got the ability to drill down on the actuals to see what categories there are. And I'm not drilling down on target because target, of course, isn't broken up by the categories. Now, maybe we want to show it at a higher level first. So what you can do is you can right-click and you can say select members. Right, and add all products. Let me just shrink that. Cool. So now what this is giving us is it's giving us the ability to drill down from that actual to the individual products. Cool. So that is step one. Second thing we want to do is we actually want to add some more Ssas to this particular chart. We actually want to add a chart next to the scorecard. What we're going to do is we're going to say right-click on August webinar. Say new, I'm going to say report, and here are all the different types of reports. The one we're really interested in over here is the Analytic Chart. There are some others. Pro-Clarity Analytics you're almost certainly not going to use. Reporting services you're going to use a lot. Excel services you're going to use a lot. Now we're going to build an Analytic Chart. Once again, you've got to choose a data source. We only have one. And we call this a sales report. Right, so the designer for the reports is really pretty simple. All you got to do is hang on over to the details and add what you want. Now, what you do have here, which you don't have on the scorecard, is you have the ability to choose measure group. I'm going to choose sales summary. And what that does is it filters this list. So as you change from sales summary, you can see sales reasons, there's less. Really tightens that up quite a lot. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to say I want to look at sales amounts, put it on the series, and I want to look at sales amounts over time. So I'm just going to drag time calendar in there. And by default, I'm going to say, show me the time calendar over all these periods. Okay, so there's our sales over time. Pretty basic stuff. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in gross profit margin. So we want to see what's our profit margin on that stuff. What you'll notice, and this is pretty cool, because one of these is formatted as a number in PerformancePoint, the other one's formatted as a percentage, PerformancePoint automatically sets up two scales, one for the number on the left and one for the percentage on the right. Very, very cool. Now, the other thing that we might want to do is we might want to actually filter this by the particular sales territory that we're looking at. So I'm going to go to Dimensions, I'm going to add sales territory to the background, and for now I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to do one other thing. Got quite a lot of things that we can do, but this is the main one. You can hit Filter, I'm going to say Filter Empty Axis Items, and I'm also going to hit there and I'm going to say Filter Empty Series Items. Cool. So that's our sales report. Pretty basic stuff. Let's save it away. And let's add our sales report to our dashboard. So just drag it right on. Now we want to connect this up so that we can do some filtering. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to filter this with the time intelligence. Okay, and as you can see, there are the different hierarchies that we can connect it to. We of course want to connect it to date calendar. And we want the member unique name. Now the other thing that you can do that's real cool in PerformancePoint is you can actually send values from the scorecard to the chart. Now we know that we've got sales territories running down the rows. So if we go to row member, we've got display value, but we want that member unique name because we want to send the MDX. Click on it, and we drag it across. All right, and it has picked up sales territory, so that's all good. And we got member row, member unique name. Okay, so from the row, send the MDX across. All good. And I'm going to say deploy to SharePoint. Alright, so here we go, and you can see, just refresh that page real quick. As you can see, what it's done is that the chart that was over all the different years is now only showing us 1 year. The reason it's doing that is in the time calcs, we're actually sending the values for the bottom axis from this filter over here. Right, so there we can see, okay, rolling 12 months. If we do this month, it'll of course show 1 block. No data, so nothing over there. Last year rolling one shows us quite a nice chart. The other thing we've got is if we click over here, not applicable, no data. Here's the data for North America. Alright, and there's the data for the Pacific. This is pretty cool. I'm going to do one more thing now. Now, we know that we can do this drill down over here. But now you can see we're not seeing those different products. So maybe what we actually want to do is also be able to filter that particular chart by those products. So two things that we need to do for that. I'm going to flip on back to Dashboard Designer. The first thing is the sales report needs to have those products showing on the sales report. So I'm going to go over here to Product. I'm going to pull categories in. I'm actually going to pull categories in to the series. Okay, all products / sales amount, all products / gross profit. It's pretty cool. Save the report away. Next thing we need to do is we need to link up that scorecard. So let's hop on back. And this time, instead of row member, we're going to choose the column member. Drag it across. Right now, it has picked up product categories, so that's cool. Now one little thing that we can do, and this is quite different, is if we want to do something, I want to click on bikes and I want to get a breakdown of all of the different types of bikes on that chart. What I can do is a little bit different. I hit connection formula, and I can actually do a formula based on what I'm sending across. The most important part is this first piece. Now, just be real careful. This first piece is actually case sensitive, so that U has to be capital, the N has to be capital, or one word. So when I type in unique name, I'm saying take that member unique name. Take that little chunk of MDX, and PerformancePoint will look at what you've clicked on and convert it into a chunk of MDX, and then you use that in your formula. After you've put that in, everything else that you type in the screen is MDX, so you've got the full flexibility that MDX gives you. I'm going to do the simplest version. I'm going to say the children. So give me the children of whatever I've clicked on. Hit OK, hit OK. Say save, and I'm going to deploy to SharePoint. Alright, so looks pretty similar. Let's click over here. Right away, you can see something real different. What it's done is it said, give me the children of all products. And of course, the children of all products is accessories, it's bikes, it's clothing, it's components. We can have a look and we can see, you know what, actually over here, accessories is totally our best profit margin, even though bikes is really our best-selling product. So very, very cool. Of course, the drill down will work just the same. You know, so maybe the chart's a little bit busy, but you do have all these capabilities. And of course, being PerformancePoint, it's way more interactive than that. So if we're looking, for instance, we can see touring bikes over there. We want to dive in, do a little bit more analysis. Dead easy. Click on through, and it's actually given us a breakdown of the touring bikes. So it'll actually drill in to July 2007, break up all the touring bikes for us. Maybe I want to look at North America. I actually want to look at those touring bikes a little bit differently. Another thing I can do is I can right-click, and there's this really nifty option called the Decomposition Tree. The Decomposition Tree does is, instead of that chart that we've got, it actually breaks those numbers up and tells us what makes up those numbers. So here you can see, right, touring 1000 blue. I want to see, firstly, what date these were sold on. Now, the key thing here is all the stuff that we've got above is stuff that we have already filtered on to get to this point, so we can't break it up further than that. Here we can see the individual days. We're already at the deep lowest level for a product, as you can see, so touring 1000. Right, and of course we can break it up further. Maybe we want to go down to region. There we can see, okay, we've already pre-filtered for the United States. These are how much we're making in each region. Cool. Rachel, do we have any questions coming in over there?
We do. We have one question. It is, what are the print capabilities of dashboard with format and export to PDF?
Okay, so there are one or two limitations with the dashboard itself. There is no export for the whole dashboard. There's only exports for the individual pieces. So we've got an export to PowerPoint, and you'd then be able to, let me open that up. Right, and that gives us a PowerPoint, but it is of course just that one component. There isn't actually a container component that you can export the whole page and lose the SharePoint stuff. So that is something that we don't have. And let me just show you Excel real quick. That is something that PerformancePoint doesn't have. And that's really what that scorecard would look like. Alright, was that the only question, Rachel?
We actually just got another one.
Sounded like it?
Yep, from John. Can a perf point filter based on Ssas dimension be applied to an Ssrs report if the parameter is based on the same dimension?
Yes, it can. And this is actually one of the greater parts of PerformancePoint, because these filters are so much slicker than the reporting services ones. So as long as it's based on the same dimension in the hierarchy, there is also another trick where instead of setting the parameter in Ssrs to a data set, what you do is you actually just let any value in. And what that gives you the capability of doing is you don't have to match up the hierarchy because the MDX gets fixed. So if you use product categories, the multi-level one, you can send that in, or you could use product category, and you can actually mix and match and have a very flexible reporting services report. And John, if you're interested in that kind of thing, there is actually some really cool stuff that you can do around having dynamic measures so that when you click on your PerformancePoint scorecard, it actually changes the measure that shows up in your reporting services report. So there are some really cool things that you can do around that.
Oh, wow. And we actually got a few more questions, Mark, if you want to answer them.
All right, well, let's take them quickly.
Okay. Does PerformancePoint ship with SharePoint Enterprise by default?
Yes, it does. That's an excellent question. Somebody might have struggled with 2007 where it didn't. It was a separate install. PerformancePoint 2010 is a native SharePoint 2010 Enterprise feature. If you've got Enterprise, you just switch it on. You literally go into Central Admin and say, give me PerformancePoint, and you have PerformancePoint.
Perfect. And then we have another one from Michelle. What component versions go into our demo today of SharePoint and SQL Server, etc.?
What component versions? So it's SQL Server 2008 R2. We're actually not using any of those capabilities. You could be down to SQL 2008, SQL 2008 or SQL 2005. I'm using SharePoint 2010 Service Pack 1, but all the things that I've shown you so far will work 100% on SharePoint 2010 non-Service Pack.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Are you using a Power Pivot for Excel anyway?
Am I using it anywhere? Not in this demo, but we are using Power Pivot for Excel and Power Pivot services quite extensively at quite a few places.
Oh, okay.
In fact, we have a training course on Power Pivot for Excel.
We do, and the wonderful Mark Stacey is our teacher. So we have a couple more questions, but do you want to finish and we can do them at the end, or?
No, I think it's important to take a couple of these questions as they come up.
So here's another one from Eddie. Is there a way in a PerformancePoint to track what dashboards users are viewing and the type of activities they're doing with them?
Alright, so the SharePoint Web Activity Monitoring will tell you what dashboards people are using. From the point of view of what they're doing with the dashboards, you can track what they're doing, what queries are going against the cube by using the cube logging, but there is no logging of this user drilled down on this level. It'll tell you which pages they've used, but it won't tell you this user clicked down on North America and the other user actually clicked down on Europe. You don't have that level of grain. So you can't differentiate between those two clicks.
Okay.
Okay, let's take one more.
All right, this is from Thomas. Can you install SharePoint and PerformancePoint on a local laptop without an Active Directory on Windows 7?
You can install SharePoint 2010 on a local laptop on Windows 7 without Active Directory. I've got to tell you that I don't think PerformancePoint is going to work in that environment.
Oh, okay.
You pretty much need Active Directory for a lot of the stuff that sits underneath this.
Okay, great. We'll save the rest of the questions then until you're ready, so just let me know.
Hi. Cool. So let's jump on back to Dashboard Designer. So we're going to do a couple more things. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a member selection filter. I'm going to say new. And I'm going to hit filter, and I'm going to create member selection. Right, so first thing is, where must the values for this filter come from? It's same data source. Which dimension are we going to filter on? Right, so pretty easy. We, in this case, we're going to use product categories. There we go, product categories. Let's say filter members. Now you'll notice the screen looks real similar to the previous screen for the scorecard. But there is a difference. If I selected just those things, I wouldn't be able to drill down in the filter. I'd only go down to this level. So that's quite an important difference. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to say auto select all descendants, and I'm going to do one other thing. Right, I'm going to say set as default selection. So by default, let's have all the products. Let's hit OK. Right, now you can see all products. Now this piece over here, the filter measure, this is a Service Pack 1 feature. It's for cascading measures. We're not actually going to dive into that today, but cascading measure would basically be if you want to only limit the products that are sold in Germany. That's really what you'd use the filter measure for. Okay, display method. I'm going to say multi-select tree because we want to be able to select bikes and components, for instance. And I'm going to hit finish. Okay, let's say new filter, product categories, and I'm going to save it away. Right, so the final thing to do is we're actually going to bring this filter onto our dashboard. Now, we've only got 3 zones on our dashboard and we're adding a 4th component. It isn't actually a problem because what we can do is we just drag it on. It'll pop up over there. Now maybe you didn't want to do that. Maybe you actually needed another zone. So you do have some options over here if you hit the right click. Really important. You right click in that little white space. So if you click there, it's not going to work. If you click there, it's not going to work. It's got to be in that white space. We've got some options. We could say add below, drag the components across. So you've got some options like that. The other thing that you can do, if I drag it back over there, I'm just going to delete that zone. You can also go to zone settings. And so what's the name of the zone? I'm not going to change that. What's the height? So maybe if we wanted to keep a little bit more space for this, we could change that. We're not going to. And we also have a couple different orientations. So horizontal, obviously next to each other, vertical above each other. Stacked means you actually have a changer to change through multiple of them. Now, I'm going to go with vertical. And I want to do one other thing. I'm going to hit zone settings, and what I want to do is I want to make that one a little bit wider. Let's make it 70%. So you really have quite a lot of options for how you modify that look and feel. Let's, we can't deploy yet, we still need to connect this up. So product categories, I'm going to grab maybe unique name. Now, I'm not going to connect it to the sales report because we've already got product category set up over there. Let's move it across there. A little bit different this time. What I'm going to do, you'll notice that there's a new product hierarchies over there. So we can either connect there or we can connect to the rows. I'm going to show you this one. Essentially what we're going to do is now we're going to control that hierarchy from the filter. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to deploy the SharePoint. So very, very similar. What you'll notice if I, let's choose breaks. Right, so what it's done is it's actually flattened out that hierarchy. So instead of having that drill down that we had earlier, it's actually taken those product categories that we've selected, even though they're on different levels, and put them through over there. So it's a different way of looking at things, and sometimes it's a much cleaner way of looking at things. Cool, so we really got one more thing to show you. And what we're going to show you is we're going to create ourselves a new scorecard, but first we're going to create a couple extra columns on our existing scorecard. So I've got my action and my target. I want a couple of things. I'm going to say this month, data mappings, choose my data connection, and sales amount. Right, we're going to do a couple things here. We're going to say, give me a time intelligence filter. In this case, I'm saying this month, but I actually saw that there's no data in AdventureWorks for this one. So I'm going to say -1.month. Cool, and we're going to filter that. Right, so that's my actual. Pretty cool. And I know that that's what I'm achieving this month. What I want to do is I know I want to achieve more than last month. So I'm going to make last month the target. I'm going to say compare it to this month. And I'm going to go here. I'm actually going to copy this month. Of course, if I edit the formula, it becomes month -1. And maybe I want to have multiple targets. So I've got last month, last year. I'm going to do the same thing, compare it to this month. And I'm going to choose sales data connections, and I'm going to choose sales amount. Okay, so I could just as easily have copied it. Time intelligence, and I'm going to say year minus 2 dot month. So the last two things, I don't want to have green, yellow, red here. I actually want to have just two values. Did I do better or did I do worse? So I hit set scoring pattern and indicator. Right, increasing is better because it's sales amount. You can either have decreasing is better or closer to target. Band by normalized value. Quickly here, this is the most common one you're going to use. It's going to say actual divided by target. Stated score is if you're pulling from analysis services KPIs. That's pretty much the only thing you'll use it for. The numeric value of actuals if you know what the value should be. Okay, and here we've got the choice of indicators. And of course there's a whole bunch of them. I personally have never used these in a production system. I think they're quite ugly. So we'll stick to the pretty blasé ones. Now the other thing you can do is if you've created your own, there'll be some over here that you can use. Let's go. Next. Worst value, north works. Okay, and I know that we want 100%. I want to do the same thing for last month, last year. Same settings. I'm going to choose the two stoplights. Finish, and 100%. Okay, and what I'm also going to do is I'm actually going to create myself a gross profit KPI. It's going to be very similar to sales. So I'm actually going to copy and paste and call it gross profit. Right, and because I don't care about those two, I'm just going to delete them. Just hit delete. Yep. Delete. Now I'm going to change these to point to gross profit. But with the same calculations kept in place. Save it away. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create myself a new blank scorecard. Again, standard, so blank. And I'm going to call this sales and profit. The difference here is we want to put two KPIs on. So I'm going to drag in sales. I'm going to drag in gross profit. We know that we don't care about actual, so you just click on it and hit delete. We don't care about target. What we do care about is drilling down on those things. Let's go and do sales territory for both of them. I'll just select same for sales. Got it. Now the other thing that we want to do here is we want to bring in product at the top. All right, very similar to what we've done. This time I'm dragging it over there. I'm going to say select children. Shrink that up. Actually, what we want to see is we don't want to have multiple drill downs for each of these. We want to see all of these under the same drill down. So what you can do is delete them. Go to over here under metrics. We want to see this month, last month, and last month, last year. I'm going to change one more thing. I'm going to right click and say view settings. There's a whole bunch of view settings that you can set. What can we interact with? What can we do? Some display settings. Main thing we want to do is we want to filter out empty rows. Alright, and as you'll see, the NA has now been highlighted red, which means it's not going to show in our final one. And as you can see, we can drill down from that. Alright, now one final thing we want to do is these numbers are all showing way too big. They're taking up a lot of space. So we actually want to shrink them down and show it in thousands. Pretty easy to do. If we go to sales, we hit the number format. I'm going to change it to currency. Let's put in 0.001. So 0.001 divides by 1,000. And we're going to do this real quick for all of them. And same for gross profit. Now before anybody asks, there is no bulk apply. So you do have to do it for each one. And of course now we're showing it in thousands. So I'm good with that particular chart. I'm going to add this to my dashboard. And this time I'm going to add a new page. Alright, headed 2 columns. We're actually just going to give you one zone. Alright, so there's our second page. And I'm going to drag in sales and profit. Okay, now one thing we've got to change is if we go to the properties, alright, you'll notice this button, as soon as we tick that, what it'll do is it'll give us a way to get backwards and forwards between the 2 pages. So I'm going to deploy it to SharePoint. Alright, and here, this is new. We got sales and profit. And of course, we've got all the drill down. Now I've got one final thing to show you in the last 5 minutes. Let's assume that what we've done is this was our dev side. We actually wanted to deploy this from our dev side to our prod side. So what we'll do is we'll go save workspace, and the save workspace will save everything we have in our workspace. I'm going to call it August webinar. Hi, it's so cool. We've saved it away. Now I'm going to say what I'm doing is I'm changing my server, pretend I'm actually somewhere else, right? And so we've actually moved on to our prod server, and on our prod server we want to deploy to PerformancePoint content. All we have to do then is hit this import button up in the top. The August webinar, and asks us where you want to import. So import from. Where is it coming from? Import to. I actually want to move it onto my production list, which will be August demo, PerformancePoint content. Data connections can go to data connections. Cool. 8 new items. That's right. Nothing broken. 1 item skipped. That's because we imported the data connection to itself. Cool. Well, that pretty much covers the practical stuff, I think, just in time. We do have time for a couple of questions, I think.
Okay, great. We've got quite a few. So let's start with Lewis's question. Does PerformancePoint parameters have the ability to cascade down hierarchies with the same look and feel as one would see on a pivot table?
So yes, you do have the ability to cascade down hierarchies. And if I flip on back to this one, this is the look and feel that they have. So yes, it can go down the hierarchy like that, but it doesn't have the same look and feel as a pivot table. This is the look and feel that it's got. The other thing that it can do is you can have 2 of them and connect them up that one filters the other, but they don't have the same look and feel as a pivot table.
Okay. We have another question. Is there a way to customize the BI Center page content, fonts, and font size?
Is there to customize which page?
The BI Center page.
So the actual landing page, this one.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, there is. You can do all that with CSS, but to be quite frank, you should throw this page away. And if you go site actions, site settings, and welcome page, you just browse to a different page. I mean, that current landing page that they've got, throw it away. If I'm understanding you correctly that it's that page, just use a different page.
Okay.
And if you want to customize fonts, that's all CSS settings.
Okay, perfect. We have a question from Jeff. How many more features does PerformancePoint have over Power Pivot for Excel?
That's a complicated question. So they do different things. Power Pivot for Excel is the ability to build yourself your own cube and connect up multiple data sources. So Power Pivot itself has no presentation layer. It does not have any graphs, it does not have any charts, it doesn't have any of those things. All that presentation layer sits inside Excel. PerformancePoint is a presentation layer. It's the chart, it's the interactivity. What you can do is you can build a Power Pivot model, publish it to SharePoint, and then connect to it from PerformancePoint. So that's quite common. It's not one or the other. They do very different things.
Okay, that makes sense. Are there any known issues connecting PerformancePoint to SQL Server Denali?
There should not be. I'm not aware of any issues.
Okay. So
I
as
can
far
tell you
as
of some Power Pivot issues, but not in PerformancePoint.
Okay, so good. That's good. John would like to know, how do you set order on columns on the scorecard?
How do you set order on columns? Okay, so that's a good question. Essentially, if you want to have, there's two things. If you want to have different order of, sorry, I clicked over there. If you want to have a different order of these things, you'll just drag them in the order you want them. So if I want to put target there, I can put it there. Or if I want it there, I can put it there and just delete the other one. If you wanted to change them over here, that you wanted bikes before accessories, that's based on the sort order of the cube.
Okay.
So I think that should answer that question.
Yeah, great. And unfortunately, I know we do have some more questions, but we are out of time. So do you have a contact slide that you could put up, Mark?
I do.
And you could, I know we didn't get to everyone's questions, and I apologize. It was a very jam-packed session, and I can say, at least for myself, I learned a
Those
ton.
colors aren't great.
It's okay.
All right.
All right, great. So here's Mark's contact information. So if you have any further questions about this, please contact him. He's great at getting back to people. So as always, the session has been recorded, and it will be available on our website by the end of the week. And thank you, Mark. That was great.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.